A deadly raid on the city of Jenin, one of the biggest Israeli operations in the occupied West Bank in 2 decades. Israel used drone strikes on Monday for only the second time since 2006. Hundreds of its troops were also involved in long gun battles. The Jenin Brigades, a unit made up of militant groups based in a crowded refugee camp, said it was engaging Israeli forces and had shot down one of the drones. Meanwhile, Israeli armoured bulldozers ploughed up roads in the camp, as this video shows, interrupting city water supplies. The camp has been at the heart of an escalation of violence across the West Bank that has triggered mounting alarm from Washington to the Arab world. Palestinian medic Salah Mansour said they'd treated critically injured people inside the camp.
As medics, we're anxious because the Israeli strikes don't differentiate between medics or civilians or members of the resistance. The Israeli raid today was a very tough one. It was tough for medics as well as civilians who were inside the camp. There are many cases of women who were suffocating, pregnant women. And we treated many people who were having panic attacks.
An Israeli military spokesperson said Monday's operation deployed a brigade-sized force, suggesting around 1,000 to 2,000 troops. It showed the growing importance of the camp, where hundreds of fighters from militant groups, including Hamas, Islamic Jihad and Fatah, are based, with an array of weapons and a growing arsenal of explosive devices. The Israeli military said it struck a building that served as a command centre for fighters from the Jenin Brigades. Army raids in Jenin and other West Bank cities have grown frequent in the past year, alongside a series of deadly attacks by Palestinians against Israelis and rampages by Jewish settler mobs against Palestinian villages.
Email exchanges from inside the BBC, they talk about the risk of violating Indian laws. It's easier to rake up the freedom of speech debate, but does it give anyone a free pass to knowingly violate the law? America supports India because it needs India's support in return. And India is working with the US because it suits India's interests. This is how geopolitics works. Last night, he diffused a crisis with his defense minister. But today, Netanyahu was confronted with a new problem. His cabinet seems to have rebelled against him. The UK is looking at the Indian subcontinent to fill its coffers. That India seems to be negotiating from a position of power, like a partner and not a former colony.
And there they go. It looks like
The US and Russia are dangerously close to an armed conflict. This year, 2023, New Delhi will be the capital of global diplomacy. For a country as diverse as ours, with 88% of the population illiterate, it was a very big deal to write a constitution, and that too, the world's largest. Meanwhile, if we may, here's a Republic Day gift from India for the BBC. A list of suggestions for the BBC for their upcoming documentaries. Number 1, the Kohinoor and the colonial loot. Number 2, an outdated monarchy and unhealthy obsession with the royals. Number 3, racism in 2023. We're waiting.